So guys, hi. So after we know about the MVC and time leaf, about the templating engine, we're going to look at the Spring data, right? So how do you connect your database to your application? Now, what is the role of a database, right? A database is used to save information that is in textual format. So for example, you have a user, right, and you want to save the user details. So where would you save it? You have to save it in a database, right? It could be a text file, doesn't matter. But the more sophisticated and more widespread use is what we use a database for. Okay, so let's look at it. Okay, so let's look at what. So one way to access. So you have a Spring application, right? From the Spring application, when you talk to the database, there are so many things you have to take care of, like like ensuring that the table exists, and then you create the table, and then you have the proper uh, you know the column names and everything else in the column types. The one way to solve the problem is using something called as JPA. Okay, now what JPA is called Java Persistence API. Now it essentially gives you an interface that kind of to manage this relational database. Okay, so what we have is you have like so we have this a framework that is given to you, right? And one of the thing is called the Spring JPA. If you look at this, the last one is called Spring Data JPA. So we're going to learn about this, right? So it is an implementation of the repository abstraction. So it's basically like it's domain driven design, and it's based on the Java application framework Spring. All right, so what we are going to look at is how to use it and what things are and the basics. So to get started, the best thing I like to do is go to Spring guides. All right, we go to spring.io, go to the guides section, and then we look for data. All right, we search for it, or we can search for MySQL. There we go. So accessing data with MySQL, and this is the article I am going to talk about, and I've modified this article a little bit to help everyone out. All right, so let's first of all create the database. Now ensure you have MySQL installed. Now MySQL, I would recommend you to install MySQL 5.x, that is the MySQL 5. But if you're using MySQL 8, make sure you use the this feature. So when you do an installation of MySQL, we have to use the old way to to authenticate. Like you see this one, so we will be given a prompt which is like authentication method. We have to use the use legacy authentication method. All right, so it can be like we have to use the legacy authentication for now, just to make things simpler for us, right? So we just close it, and this is an example, just a note. If you're using MySQL 8, make sure you do not go for the recommended method, but use the legacy method for authentication. Once you have MySQL, we pretty much I'm just opening up MySQL Workbench. It's an application that you can install on MySQL. When you install MySQL downloader, it comes with it. Now in here, I'm going to just go to my users. I'm going to add a new account. I'm going to give it the user Spring and Spring. All right. I know this is not the safest, the strongest password I know, and just to make it easier, I'm going to give him all the privileges, right? And I'm going to say add entry on all schema, okay, and I'm going to give him select all. You see this button on the right here, right? Select all, and apply. All right. Now what this is going to do, so basically we created a new user. All right, so we have a Spring user. The username is Spring, password is Spring, and the user has all the permissions that we need. Now where are we going to store our information? For that, I'm going to go on this thing called a schema, right? I'm going to go here. I'm going to create a new schema. I'm going to right click, create a schema, and I'm going to give it a schema name as Spring underscore DB. Just keep everything default and apply. It's gonna do that and finish. We have it. So Spring underscore DB is the place where I want all my tables that my current Spring application needs. All right. So now let's look at, first of all, now we have the database. Okay. Now let's look at the application. If you go to my repositories for the Spring data, it is essentially the same thing that we have over here. It's just that I have added time leaf, and that's it. And I've added a few API for this demo. All right, so let's just look at this repository. All right, it's basically a thingy, just a modified version from the same article. Everything is the same. All right, so let's look down. So I'm going to first of all clone it. I've already cloned it, and so using git clone, and I'm going to open it using my code editor of choice. Okay, so now let's look at the pom.xml, the first thing of any application, right? So we see that, hey, we have the Spring data. So we, in this case, give me a sec, let me see if my, okay, so I do have Java installed. Just had to kind of confirm it. Okay, so in this case, if you look at the thing, what I have, as you see, there are two dependencies that are very important for me right now. So we know about the first one, that is your Spring starter, right? And then we know about this one, the time leaf. So ensure you have these two first. Then you're going to add this one. I just added like Spring Boot starter data JPA. Okay, so you see this dependencies paragraph, dependencies section, in which have all of my dependencies. I'm going to add this one, Mysql connector, and I added Spring Boot starter JPA. We already had these two. All right, if you want to use S3, we would need to add that as well. All right, so we have seen that essentially whatever you need, you add it over here. Alrighty, now after that, my pom.xml is ready. I'm going to go to my source. Now let's see what the problems are over here. Okay. So in here, I'm just trying to see what the problem is. You know, I'm trying to see why it is showing me these. You know, it's all red in here, right? I don't know why it's not considering that. It's just my. So even if I run it, it should be fine. But my I just want my code editor to, my IDE, my integrated development environment, to be good. Right. Okay, just one sec, guys. Let me go over here. It still has a problem detecting my Spring Boot. I'm going to go, first of all, I can do mvnw install. It's going to, oops, my bad. Okay, it's going to download everything, you know, just to be safe. It's going to download everything again. On my dependency getting downloaded, and let's see if this kind of solves the problem from there. This might take a while, you know, whenever you do you know, Spring Boot start or do mvnw install, you know, they all take some time to just download all your dependencies from the internet. So it really depends on how your internet speed is, right? So just you know, let's just finish downloading. It's gonna recompile everything, and then let's see again. Okay, build success. That means I have everything installed right now, right? It just compiled everything. So I'm just trying to say, like, what was the problem, if there was any. Now let's solve this problem. What is the first problem? He says the import cannot be resolved. Let's Google it up, right? Import cannot be resolved. Okay, just one sec. I am trying to. The problem is it may be because of my VS Code settings. Nope, it's not. Okay, then let's look at this now. There's an mvnw clean. Let's do that. Okay, so if you're on OS X or Linux, that would be // but in this case I'm just doing mvnw clean. That's it, just to make sure. Okay. Okay guys, just a sec, let me see what this problem is and I will get back on this. Okay, so really interesting. The only problem was I just had to close it and reopen it again. Apparently that solved the problem, but yeah, that's really weird, but it's anyways. So when you do that, so we have this main controller. All right, so let's look at what we have. Let's look at the close. Yeah, okay. So let's get started. So for that we studied these the dependencies. We already have the database, right? So how do we tell Spring that where the database is? We go to the resources, we go to application.properties. You see this thing here? I'm going to say spring.data source.url is equal to jdbc mysql host 3306, and this is my database name. Now in this case I created my database name as spring_db, right? So I'm going to make it spring_db, and that's it, and my username and my password for the database. All right, just one sec, I'm trying to zoom in a little bit so we can see stuff. Hold on a sec. Okay, seems I need to sign up. But anyways, I'm just gonna zoom in for now then. Okay. Sorry. There we go. So we have seen this, right? Hold on. Plus. Yeah, beautiful. I think that's much clearer. So here we have this spring.datasource.url is JDBC, MySQL, and we have 3306, that's the default port. This spring underscore db is my database name that I just created, and these are just some parameters I can pass. So I'm just saying, hey, you know what, the user time zone as WTC. All right. Now, if you look at, again, just for people who might not have seen it or must have ignored it the last time, we started with the pom.xml file. Make sure you have this dependency here, spring boot starter data jpa, and the MySQL dependency, right? So we already had this Spring Web, and we had the time leaf for the last labs, right? So let's go back here. That's how we do it. Now, just say you want to create a new table called as user. You have to, because you have to say the user, right? So all that I'm going to do is create a file called as user.java in my main thing, right? You see here it says that a package, the same package that I have used here. So you see here the make sure the package name is same. I create a user class. You see here user. It's a public class, and I'm going to annotate that with a annotation called as @entity. What this does, it is essentially going to create a new table for you automatically. See here, before I run anything, if I look at my Spring, my database, there's nothing here, right? So if I go back here and I see this, what is happening is, okay, so now how do you define this table? In every database you have to create a new table, right? So I'm going to create a new table called as user is going to have an ID, which is going to be, you cannot annotate it with @ID, and it has to be automatically generated. Okay, I'm going to create a name, the email, and these are just public getters and setters. All right, so basically just getters would get an ID, and setters would set an ID, and the same thing for for the other variables. Now you could add so many things there. You could just say, like private integer age, right? And Spring would essentially Hibernate would essentially create this age for you. Once you have this, I can click this and I can say create a getter and setter. There we go. Now once you save this, the Spring will run this automatically. Okay, so you don't have to worry about your teammates having the same database or other sorts of those nasty problems. Okay, now what we have is, now once you have this, okay, now we have a table created automatically. You don't have to do anything. Moving on. Now, how do you access this table or this entity? Now, you would have multiple users, right? Your application would have multiple users, or any application has multiple entities, right? So, Facebook has multiple users. Your application will have multiple users, and each user will have the following properties: the name and the email. You could also have your URL, right? Your profile picture URL. Now, out of those multiple users, how do you find it from the database? Now we know that there are these MySQL queries. You can use SQL language, and we have SQL queries to kind of query the database, like, hey, give the user with the name as something. So here I'm going to have that. I can just create a new repository. Now a repository class is something that Spring data gives me automatically. All right. So what is the problem here? Let me see this. That's okay. Whenever I create this, remember I created a public interface called as user repository, and it extends a CRUD repository, okay, of a type user and integer. What it says is, it is a create, read, update, and delete repository. A repository is basically an operations that a Spring data gives you by default. Like, what do? We kind of remove a user, we add a user, or we remove an entity, we add an entity, we create an entity, right? So these are 4 different operations that are very common, right? You have to kind of find the user from the table, read the user, that is called as the read operation, create a new user, or something like that. So when you do this, guys, all your SQL queries are automatically generated for you. You don't have to do anything here. All right. Now moving on, I'm going to go to my main controller. Now this is where all the magic happens. Okay, now let's close all the methods. We'll go over all of them one by one. All right, now what here we are going to do here, again, there are these comments to kind of explain you what is happening. So we know this, it's a controller because it is annotated by @controller. Okay, now what happens is, so like you can just say request mapping /demo. This is just so, like, usually we have these request mappings, the router, right? The router is configured over here. Now instead of doing this, like, /demo /add /demo or something like that, right? You could add the path /demo just on the top. Now this is, you don't need this. I can just remove this entirely, okay, and it should just run fine. But this is just another way for me to kind of tell you that this is, you can configure the router to kind of do it this way. So instead of demo, you could have / users. So all the mappings inside, now this would be essentially something like this, like / to your local website, so like http localhost 8080 / users / add. Okay, so this would be automatically @ because we defined the entire controller at / users. Okay, now that's it. Now if you save this, right? So we have the first thing, we are auto wiring. This means that Spring in runtime will find a repository will find a class called as user repository, and give an instance of it. This should be given on runtime. So it's going to find this user repository, and you can access that in your Spring kind of class. Auto wired is just a fancy way to kind of have inversion of control. What is inversion of control? Now remember, you defined this class, right? User repository. Can you see what is happening here? I got the instance of user repository. Usually you would have to do something like this, like user repository is equal to new, user repository, something like that. But no, notice we are not doing this. What we are doing is we are telling Spring to do this for us. It's going to create it for us automatically. Okay, now why this is important? Now this is good so that you can mock objects. You have to always have loose coupling, right? So whenever you can, for this, we'll see this later, but this allows us to have this user repository, and you could have, so right, remember when I write this, we are kind of wiring this user repository variable to this class. But let's just say you have a demo class or you have a mock class, right? You have to kind of test the user repository. Like what happens, you kind of, you do unit testing. When you're testing this controller, you don't care if the repository is working or not. You're just testing that unit separate from your entire application. All right. That is why you do in testing, you kind of mock that user repository. If you do this, you have to modify the controller every single time. But to kind of make testing easier for us, we use auto wired. All right, it's going to give it for us. Now let's say we want to add a new user. So here we know this, what post mapping is going to add a post mapping. So whenever data is sent on to post at /data, this function will be called, and we know this, we have the request parameter of name and the email. So this function expects you to have a name and an email. What I'm doing is I'm just creating a new user, I'm setting the name, I'm setting the email, and I'm saying user repository.save. Guys, save method is automatically given to you by default, and I'm just printing out a text called as, hey, you know what, I saved something. All right, that's it. I created another get mapping at /all, and in this case I'm just going to return find all. So whenever you make user repository, you get these methods implemented for you automatically. Remember, I'm just querying my database to find all the users that I have in my current application. You see what, I did not write a single query for this. Now what would be something like select star from users, something like that, right? But what we want to do is this happens automatically for you by default. So even if you change the database to PostgreSQL or Microsoft SQL, anything that you want. All right. The other one that I have is /user. All right. Now you can just say, like get one user. This is just to kind of find one user. All right. So here it's like, I'm going to say get one user, and I just need the ID. Now this is essentially was something like, select star from users where ID is equal to something that you pass. This is what the query would be. Notice what happens is whenever it's a user repository, user repository dot, remember you can say I can do count, I can do delete, I can do, I can do find all, I can do find all by ID, and I can also do find, so like find by ID, and I can just pass it an ID. See what is happening here, right? I can just, these methods are implemented for me automatically, right? You can also define something like this. I can go here and I can just say, you know what, I want to return a user. So user find by name, okay, and I have, string name. Notice what happens here. Because this name, see this name, this is the convention. By the way, we have to use find has to be small, B has to be capitalized, and N has to be capitalized. See this, if I go to my user class, there is an attribute called as name. So when you write find by name, I can just get the user by its name, right? Beautiful. I did not have to write anything. This is done to me by default, okay? So when I go here, now if I will use that thing later, but add user is essentially like a get mapping to just show my view page. I'm just want to show my view. That is my template. It is just a form element, and I'm adding it to /demo/add. Okay, I'm going to say users, /add. So basically this is the endpoint that I'm calling. So here this action, it goes to /users/add. This is what I want to add. Remember this, and this is users. Alrighty. Now when I go here and I can say, so input type is equal to text, name is equal to name, and ID is equal to name. I'm just creating two fields called as name and the email. When I submit this information will be sent to this action, to this endpoint, and the method will be post. So we go to the main controller and this method will be called. Okay, now let's run this application and see how it goes. So mvnw spring boot run. Okay, it's going to compile everything. Just give me a sec. Okay, so I have another application running on port 8080. Let me see what that is. I need to kill that application. So I can just change the port though. So if let's just say you have some other applications that you have running on some port 8080, right? You can always change it. So my spring boot change port. Server.port is equal to 8090 now, for example. So when I run this, it's going to run on port 8090. So on this particular machine, I have another application running on port 8080. So I'm just going to make it port 8090, something like that, right? It's going to start it. There we go. Now notice what is happening here. You see my application has started, right? If I look at my database now, if I refresh, look at the tables. Bingo, we have this user tables. Do you see how beautiful that is? See here we have the ID, email, and the name. It's automatically created for you. Now let's look at my browser. I'm going to go to localhost 8090, right? So hold on a sec. Is that the same thing? What's my port number? It says port. What is my port that it started on? What is the port here? Oh, 8090. Okay, hold on a sec. 90 / users add user. HTTP 8090. Yeah, that's right. Let's go to the application. Let's see what my. So I have /add user, right? So /users, /users, and then /add users. Okay, so there we go. This should be running. Why is this not running? Okay, so let's see what is happening here. There we go. You see here, add users. Let's say first to all. It's gonna say, hey, there is nothing in the database for now. So whenever I say users /all, is going to go to this function, right? Because it says get mapping add /all is going to go to my user repository and find all the method, find all the all the things that we have in here, right? So there we go. I'm going to go here. Now if I say add user, right, you see I want to show this form, and I'm going to say Ninad, and I say the name is Ninad and the email is Ninad, right? Submit. It's saved. Something is problematic. You see it says demo/add, so I need to just restart this application. Hold on a sec. So what happened, you see, it's what happened, it went to /demo/add. Why did it go there? It's because if you look at my form, it's currently users, but earlier I had a demo and I did not have it saved. Look at the thing on the top here. See, it says it's not saved, the white dot. This is a very common mistake. People get frustrated on this, right? So that's why I'm going to go, I'm going to save this. Okay, I'm going to rerun my application. Okay, Spring Boot run. It's going to take a little bit to start running. Okay, bingo. If I refresh this, we have it, and then I can just say no. But of course you can have like a fancy form in here, like you can have bootstrap and everything. So it says saved. See here, /user/add was called. If I go to /all now, see it shows me I have one ID, and that is Ninad, right? If I go to my database, I refresh it, see I have this entity right over here. Now I go to my thing again, I go to add users again, and I just create another one. Let's just say Dora, right? I can say Dora the explorer at gmail.com. all right, hey, say it was added. If I go to all again, there we go. So I have Ninad and I have Dora, right? If I go to my database, see I have two users created automatically for me. I can just use a /user, and I can just say !id is equal to, oops, my bad, 1. It's going to give me the user with an ID of 1. Why? Because you see what is happening. Go to my main controller, it goes to /user, and the thing is find by ID. It's going to find the ID. Now similarly, I just say I want to find by name or find by email. In that case, I can be like @get mapping. All right, simple stuff. Path is equal to /user by name. Okay, so public @. Of course, you can have a model view like I have it over here, and you can display the user any way you want. I'm going to say optional user, right? Get one user by name, right? And I'm going to say request param called as, it's a string, and the name is equal to name. All right, I do this. Now return user repository dot find by name, and there we go, right? What it's going to do is going to give this, hold on, what is it saying? Okay, well, that works for me. I'm going to stop my application and I'm going to start it again. Okay, now you see this /user by name. Okay, let's see this if this works. Now hold on a sec. Now you can have so many things, right? Let's just say you want to make the user, and you have to the thing as email should be unique. Then you can make it unique, right? There we go. Now this is unique, right? Hold on, something is wrong here. What's wrong? Oopsie, hold on. Okay, I can just go to Google and be like Spring Boot unique, right? Hold on a sec. Okay, there we go. We can just do this. So @ column all right. Now once we do this and I restart my application, it might create a problem because you see I already have the table. is going to update that table. So let's see what happens now, right? I just added a constraint, so I made the so like all, so they cannot be users with a same email address. I just added a constraint. If this is again, this is all optional. I'm just showing what you can do with it. You can like add a few of these constraints. You can just say, it's of a type something, all those things. So this is of a type integer automatically. Let's see how it goes. Okay, let's go to my table now. If I refresh this table, what do we have in here? If I go to my this settings of the table, okay, that's the thing, right? So here's the thing, it kind of did not add it. So what we can do is, okay, let's look at one thing at a time. Let's look at this one, user by name. Okay, so we just created it. So I'm going to go to http localhost, let's do all first. Here I can see all of my users. Give it a sec. There we go, Nina, then Dora. I can just go, what was the endpoint again? User by name. For user by name, and name is equal to, there we go, we found the user. I can say Dora. I can see Dora over here, right? So we can do these things. You can go on, play around. Now you see, one thing I had to talk about is this. So you see this, it says update. That means it's going to update the table every single time. It's not going to delete it. I can make it create. Okay, when I do that, so let's just say when I do this, it's going to create that table every single time, and it'll delete everything. All right, so let's see this. It's gonna create these things. So every single time you start the application, you do not have the previous table, nothing. All right, so maybe it's helpful sometimes. There we go. If I go to my table now, refresh my tables, go to my information. So here deleted everything. Alrighty, now let's do here. So here now, since the thing was created, now you see this unique constraint is put over here, right? So the email has to be there. Now you can always make fancy stuff, like I can go to the users and be like, like @ nope, not there. So column, and I can put stuff like nullable false. When I do this, remember what happens now. If I close this again, so hold on. Before we go there, if I look at my database now, this would be nothing. Let's just say all. I should not get anything. Hold on a sec. Just caching the result. Nope. Oops. Okay, I just stopped the application. But anyways, when I run this now, remember, because there's nothing in the table, it should be nothing. It should be null now. It's running. You give it a sec. Now let's look at it. So if I look at my users table now, what is it? So we have, you see this not null constraint. It was just added over here, right? The not null constraint was just added over there. It's automatic. So if I go to my users all now, notice there's something in my table right now. There's nothing, right? But if I do an add user and I say Ninad, right? See, it was saved. If I say all, there we go. I can see on my users, and it is also added in my database. Bingo, right? So that's pretty much it about how you can create your own tables. You can save data, persistence. You can find data. So I found by name, I found by ID, right? And that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, please post them on the knowledge forum. I'll see you guys in the next lab. Have a great day. Bye bye.